Oh, now we're live. I missed the little button that said live. What's up, David?
Hey, yeah, I had a great week. How are you doing?
Me too, man. I had a great week too. Um, I'm doing good, man. I'm hiding in one of my bedrooms because a landscaper or something out there. It sounds like I'm at an airport, so this is a little bit better. Um, yeah, I had a good week, and a couple of things were with you, which was fun, and I think we had a good week of recording on the podcast too, so that was cool. So yeah, man, it was a um, I've got it's Friday morning here, so I've got a full day ahead of me, but kind of like all fun, pumped up stuff to do. So I like weeks like this. That's for sure.
Yeah, where you get stuff done and you make progress. That's definitely the most fun of this whole business style, business stuff, right?
Yeah, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago where it was like, man, I was just feeling beat up. Like no matter what I was doing, it wasn't enough, and I wasn't giving anything the right attention. And this week, it's like, okay, that was a good week, and I'm
Yes.
making progress on things we're doing. So yeah.
So for the listeners who wonder why we are having this very casual conversation, we're going to get to this week's review in just a minute, but we usually like to take these weekly live hangouts as an opportunity to be a little bit more like reflective on what we did the last week and what we have learned and what we could share that might not fill like a whole episode, but still worth like sharing. And of course, we also like to do Q&A on those episodes. So yeah, maybe you just say something about the live hangout again, so people know where to go and
Yeah.
when and how that
Yeah,
works.
so it's abpweekly.com, like App Business Weekly. No, App Business Podcast Weekly, so abpweekly.com, and that will forward you to this page that has a Google Hangout link embedded. So you just push play, and then there's chat below. And we often have like, in fact, we have room for 100 people today. David, I swapped out the chat roll
That's good.
ID. So yeah, so if you want, last week we went over our limit, not of 100, of like 10. So we're starting to get some people show up. So love for you to join us and come ask questions. And we usually set aside like at least 30 minutes. I think today's probably going to be a 30-minute day because David and I have a bunch of stuff that we're working
Yeah.
on after this. Uh, but still, I mean, usually we say, okay, here's what we talked about last week, here's what's coming up this week, and then we answer questions. So, yeah, come join us. abpweekly.com every Friday, 10 Eastern.
That's 10 a.m.
Okay, you want to talk about you want to talk about the week that was. It was the three episodes that aired this past week were Rise of the Phablets, which was I thought a pretty interesting one. The Reskinning Defined, which you know what? They must have not. A couple people commented on it, but it must not have been on the episode. We seem to like get that right. And then Android is winning, which was talking about the amazing market share that that Android is garnering, and the latest reports of how much more Android is shipping and how much faster they're growing. In fact, I think they were the only one that grew.
Yes.
As a percent of market share, and just insane numbers. And we are kind of like talking about, is it going to be Apple's? Are they going to redo what they did in the 80s and 90s, where they became they're really good at the 5%, and someone else does the 95%, and it's already kind of shaping up that way. So
And in case you're wondering,
that was a good.
yeah, that was a good one. In case you're wondering where those comments are, we sometimes talk. A lot of that is in the Facebook group. So we have a private Facebook group that you can find on Facebook by just searching for Apple podcast. And then there's two results. One can apply by semi-private. Um, Yeah, and that's where a lot of those very good discussions happen, where people give us feedback on the podcast, and there's some comments on the website as well, but a lot of the comments happen there. So that's what we've been referring to. Regarding those
Yeah.
episodes we had last week, I mean, the thing is we always have are at least like 3 episodes in the future in our minds, because we always have to have 3 episodes for the next week and then the next one. And so the episodes we have just recorded for that are coming out next week, I think they align very nicely with what we released this week, and it kind of becomes a new theme of the podcast where we are noticing all those things that are happening, all those reports then come out, they point us in different directions. And what has been more and more clear to me is that we need to talk more about specifically what we think is changing in terms of the opportunity in the mobile market. And we think, things like phablets, bigger phones, things like Android is growing, and things like the enterprise market, which is pretty much untapped in mobile yet. Those are all themes that keep coming up in these episodes, is what I've noted, and that's basically my main takeaway from all those episodes, including the reskinning episode, where we kind of defined what reskinning is, but we also told people what we think you need to do beyond just simple reskinning in order to provide some value. So that all points into the direction of really need to treat this as a real business. Whether you sell business to consumer or business to business, you really need to treat it as a real business in order to be successful. But if you do, there's lots of success to be had.
And if anyone doesn't agree with what David's saying, or questions that, or enjoys understanding the data behind that, I think we had one of our best episodes ever. At least it was probably one of my favorites. And I thought we were going to hit it off with this guy, even though it kind of started like a little bit where, oh, you got this wrong, and let me come on and clarify. And I thought we were going to like this guy, and we were going to get along. And Mark Wilcox with Vision Mobile, who did one of the reports that we talked about, well, I guess it would be a week and a half ago, where it was like developers are struggling, or struggling developers, or was the name of the episode. And we basically used a TechCrunch article on his report as a jumping off point, disagreeing with some points. But we spent probably an hour digging into this report and talking about opportunities. So I would say if there's one can't miss episode over the next, I mean, that's probably the episode of the quarter, I thought. Just all the stuff we talk about, and what are the common traits of successful publishers. Well, really it's from developers' perspective, but it applies to publishers. And then where the opportunities are. I mean, we just nerded out and answered a lot of those questions that we recognize that we're not addressing as well as we could.
So that's episode coming up next week. And that's why I like these weekly reviews, because for us it gives us an opportunity to look back on the podcast episodes that we did and to the ones that are coming up next week, and it really gives you some perspective in terms of like what we are talking about on this podcast, because the listener can probably understand that we go from episode to episode, or from recording to recording, and sometimes you just lose the bigger picture of what you're doing there. I mean, we're now on episode 74, so that means in total we have recorded over 77 episodes at this moment, and sometimes I just can't remember what we've talked about and what we've not talked about, and this gives you the opportunity to look back and say, okay, I'm seeing a trend here. And I think all those episodes that we have published last week and that will come out next week kind of build up this whole notion of being just like a real business, treating really seriously. Episodes that we've done, semantic versioning, and I think we have another one coming up that ties into that, the managing of the Trello boards, etc. That is also another level of seriously treating your business like a business, instead of just fooling around and doing everything yourself and not really managing your releases properly. All these kind of things, we are noticing that there's a professionalization of the entire space. And if you are in that professional segment, it still seems like a giant opportunity. But we've also learned that if you're not in that segment, if you're just an amateur gold rush kind of person, then it gets harder and harder to make some money. But that's, I think it should be obvious, right?
Yeah, and maybe it's worth like repeating, like David and I don't have jobs outside of mobile. Like it's not like we have a boss and this is our side project. Like we're full on in this thing with, well, it's hard to say we have employees because everyone is contractors, but I mean there's a lot of people working with us. Well, for me, definitely across my different businesses, and even with David, we have me, David, a dev, a designer, a bookkeeper, and a VA just on that project that we're doing. So, there's a lot of people involved with what we're doing, and we're not doing anything else. So we're treating it like businesses in our lives because, I mean, shoot, I'm old. I left a real high-paying career for this, and so for me to make $1 million a year is that's not a big deal. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do when you start businesses. It's supposed to be an opportunity that's that big. So none of this stuff like scares me. I've been around a lot of dummies that have made hundreds of millions of dollars. So I shouldn't say it like that. I've been around a lot of people that you wouldn't think they're exceptional or anything, but they started businesses and they worked at them for 30 years. It could be something crazy like, hey, I called about software renewals, and then that company turned into this, and it turned into that. Now it's 400 people, and it makes 100 million or 500 million in revenue. That pretty much describes the last company I was at, and it was a big company where the dude was making tons of money, and he's just a guy. Like nothing against John, but he's just a guy, and so that's what these things are supposed to do. Is it's supposed to be high upside because you're taking a lot of risk, but just for anyone questioning like who we are or what we're talking about, we're living it. Like that's what we're doing. We're it's not like we're trying to buy a bunch of Mercedes Benz or anything, but the idea of building businesses really gets us both excited, and we're not intimidated by $1 million or $10 million. It's just shows that we're solving a problem and executing well and all this kind of stuff. So we're in it. We're way in it for mobile, and I think maybe we can do a better job of helping. We've been very good at the tactical stuff, I think, David, where we say, okay, here you got to focus on the descriptions and the ASO, and retention is important. But like today, I got an email, and I don't know if you were copied or not, but basically the guy says, hey, do you have a developer you can recommend? I love your podcast. I just found it. I'm going through your guys' episodes from the beginning, and I have enough money to make a killer game. It's my first app, and it's like, whoa, dude, if you've got a bunch of money, like, don't spend it all on your first app. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like if let's say your grandpa dies and you get a bunch of money. Oh, that was a terrible example. I'm sorry, David. If you're
No problem. He's fine. He's fine today.
David's okay, good. That was bad. David's grandpa's having some issues, but okay. So let's say someone passes and they leave you a bunch of money. So now you've got 400 grand, which would be a ton of money. I'm not a rich kid. I'm not trying to say this. I'm just for the example. And let's say you love hamburgers and you want to make a hamburger restaurant or you want to make a restaurant. Well, if you don't know how to cook, are you going to go invest all that money in a hamburger restaurant? Well, a lot of people do, and those are the people that fail. Go learn how to make great hamburgers and go start smaller. Like, it's awesome that you have, let's just say, a number for a decent game if you're managing it and all this stuff. It's like 10 grand, let's say, and spend the first grand on something way smaller, and maybe even do our reskinning thing that we talked about. And learn some things because you couldn't have given me enough money when I was first starting to. It's not like osmosis where the money makes you smart. But if you're smart and have some experience and you have money, then now we're talking. And that's kind of where David and I are at now, where we have a little bit of money and we have some know-how. But shoot, it's taken 2 years and 2 brains and 2 people, and I mean it's.
Yeah, and it's a very good example because in the real world, nobody would. That still happens, but it's much more obvious why you shouldn't just open a hamburger restaurant when you've never, even worked in a restaurant before. And,
right.
If I had $1 million in the bank and my interest was to have the best burger restaurant in Munich, I wouldn't open a business tomorrow. I'll be working in good restaurants of all kinds probably and trying to work my way up in those restaurants for the next 2 years just to learn how you do that and what making burgers and what having a restaurant entails. And I just have no idea about that at the moment. I mean, I have basic business ideas. I basically
Hmm.
know how business works at its core, but I wouldn't be trusting myself to open a hamburger restaurant today, right? And it's the same,
Yeah.
but it seems like with mobile or with software in general, people think like they can they can skip that. Like they can just have no they are no developers, they have no technical expertise, but maybe they have some money, and then they can just buy their way into that. And I was trying to explain to that person you were referring to that the good developers who who can work on their own without much guidance, who understand non-technical people and what they want, who can decipher, basically translate what normal people say to what developers say, and then execute that, and then execute really well. Those are so rare that you don't get your hands on them. They don't come to you. You can't hire them. Like you cannot hire these people. They are working at Google, they're working at Apple, or at some fancy, multi-million funded startup in Berlin or San Francisco. And
As they
there's
should be. Yeah.
yeah, and there's literally no way of hiring these people. So, the best chance is maybe if you're really smart and you're really good with your social skills, and you proven yourself in a certain niche in a community. After a year or so, you might be able to have enough connections so you can find a technical partner who you can then partner with for like a 50% share of the company. But that's one way. But in any like no, that doesn't really depend on your strategy. You have to invest something up front, and it's gonna take some time. And unless you have like uh, a lot of experience in another very related industry, unless you have worked at a company as a project manager for technical projects before, like where are you going to get that expertise from? And you just
Yeah.
can't buy your way into that.
Put it like this, it's hard enough with David being a very good developer, me understanding how to do publishing and marketing and stuff for apps, and having the experience we have, and having 100 plus apps under our belt, all different types. Uh, it's still hard for us, given an unlimited budget. Well, if we had an unlimited budget, we could probably do the Supercell release in Canada, optimize it, all that thing. But we don't expect to spend $10,000 and for sure make our money back. Like it's not, and that's with us. Like it's just not like that. By the way, David, we're talking about a different person. I got another email,
Oh,
so
you get
I
yet
know who
another
you're
one.
talking about.
It's
Yeah,
like you get so
but
many emails, you stop, yeah, you stop noticing like who you're even talking about. But we're getting a lot of emails. I would actually appreciate if some. I mean, I totally appreciate the emails. I really like it, but I would really appreciate if some of those people could come to the live hangouts and ask their questions here, because that would benefit the entire community, and we could
yeah.
yeah, we could have like a back and forth as well. That I think that would be very
Yeah.
useful for everybody.
Or the Facebook group or the comments. Yeah, the whole idea isn't that it's like good for SEO or something. It's that if we answer it, even if we don't have the answer, because a lot of times we don't know,
Yeah.
but we happen to know the answer to this one. Like, don't spend it all on your first app. But then the 30 other people like me who are quiet and don't say anything until you put a mic in their face. But I'm not like an active guy in forums or like responding to podcasts episodes and stuff. Like I'm not writing in the comments, but I'm a lurker and I read all this stuff, and so it's really helpful for all the other folks to see how we respond and see what other people are struggling with. So, yeah, just a reminder. If that would be great. If you have questions for us, if you could use one of those things like the ABP Weekly, the comments field in one of our episodes, or the Facebook group. That way, the whole community could benefit. That would be awesome. Or just have the conversation in open. It'd be awesome. Um, One thing that I thought of that I'm starting to recognize that seems to be a recurring theme, David, is the difference between someone who's committed to the entrepreneur thing, lifestyle, being the boss, running a successful business, etc., and someone who is just so excited and just wants to do it, and oh my gosh, I'm just going to go do it. and it's not quite a gold rush person, but maybe it's a little bit of a entrepreneurish person, is patience. It's like I moved to Mexico because I knew it was gonna take me 2 years to figure this out. And I see a lot of folks like, oh, I have money and I can go do this and I'm gonna go do it, and then 6 months later they're frustrated.
Yeah, and it's not like
well,
even it's two different types of persons. It might be the same person over a period of time. So I think when I started out, I was certainly more in the
yeah.
entrepreneur camp than in the serious entrepreneur camp, and a lot of this is of course fueled by the so-called experts that trying to sell you all kinds of info products, etc.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what you're so, and what infuriates you so much is that kind of sales mentality where that's why you did the app business MBA, because you said, I just can't stand these people who are selling this as if you could get rich in 4 weeks or something like that. And
Yeah, real quick, in the presentation, I tell people like, dude, if you're this type of person, don't give me your money. Like, stay away. Don't pollute the group. Like I'm like trying to keep those people. Well, I'm trying to set a tone. Like, hey, man, this is for real ballers, like real people who have real interest in making a real business. So it's like I'm like trying to be like the anti-internet marketer, used car salesman guy. So, anyways, okay.
yeah, I mean,
I cut you off and then you lost your point. Sorry, dude.
yeah, sometimes I lose my point then, but yeah, I think the moral of the story is just that it's easy, and it's not even like, I don't want to blame anybody. I don't want to be finger pointing at someone and say, hey, you expect sudden success, that's so stupid, or something like that. I think everybody has that to a certain extent, and we would all want that. But you just gotta understand that in all aspects of life, stuff just takes a long time if you want to be very good at it. And there in business there is no space for being mediocre. Like, you know, you can't just really
You'll
be,
lose. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's just how it works. And it's the same, it's really the same overall aspects of life. It's the same in sports, in music, in relationships. You just have to put the work in, and it doesn't mean you can't be smart about it or you can't be clever, but in the end you just have to learn the skills. And if you can pick up the skills faster, then that's great, but it certainly takes longer than like 4 weeks or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, that's part of what the app business MBA is supposed to be. It's like for the people that know they want to jump into mobile, let's like decrease the like flatten the learning curve. Just here's all the things that you need to know, and here's all the tools and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like, boy, if I had that when I started, I would have probably done a lot better. But
Yeah, it's not really a
um,
shortcut to getting the skills. It's more of like getting all the things out of the way in order to make it as easy and as fast as possible for you to pick up the necessary skills. But you still have to do
yeah.
it. I mean, it gives you all the information, it saves you the time and the all the problems you might run into, and that just makes it a much more effective process, but you still have to execute this process.
So I think David and I are both fired up on this subject because of this conversation we had with the Vision Mobile guys. And I think that's going to be a really interesting relationship. Like, I think they want to come on and, like, every time they release a report, we'll talk about it on the podcast. And they have, like, they interview like 10,000 developers in their last report. So it's like significant research going on here and real insights. And basically, one of the big takeaways was, the more apps you have, the more experience you have, and the more third-party tools you use in your apps, like far and away, are you more likely to see success as measured by revenue in the App Store. And it was just funny where it was something like 88% of the people make less than $10,000 per app per month, and the average number of apps was 3. So let's say the 88% of people make less than $30,000 per month. I know that's not, we're kind of inferring here, but you see what I'm doing with the math right there, David?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, gotta be
Average,
careful. I
okay.
mean, statistically,
Let's do 10,000 then.
yeah,
Okay, let's do 10,000, so that's 12% making more than 10,000 per app per month. And then the percent of developers that use third-party analytics was 21%. 21% to use in-app analytics.
like
That's not even talking about using them. It's just putting them in the app.
exactly.
So now Supercell and King probably have their own analytics. But so okay, let's take that top 2% out. So now 21% plus 2%. So we're talking app developers are using analytics, like even putting it into their app, and 12% are making more than $10,000 a month. So kind of my takeaway, and I said this on the interview, was, wow, that means that if you are treating your app like a business, you got a 50% chance of making $10,000 a month per app. Like, I looked at it like, holy smokes, you're competing with a lot of dummies, so let the dummies go be dummies. And if you are like really treating this thing like a business, holy smokes, the opportunity is even bigger than I thought. Which was kind of like everyone else took it as, oh, the consumer market's dead, it's too hard to compete. And there's some truth there. Yeah, it's kind of the opposite. I mean, there's some truth there where these guys can buy downloads and they've got monetization down and all that stuff, but there's so much room still. So, and again, we're living it, we're doing it, so it's not like we're just saying, hey, you go do it and tell us how it works. Like, we're hopefully sharing a lot of our firsthand experiences as we do it. But yeah, would you agree that that's kind of why this is like a super interesting subject right now, is because of that interview?
It certainly brought it all together really well, but it's like a trend I've been seeing on a lot of the discussions we had on the podcast and off air, and with listeners who write in, send emails and tell us about their problems and their struggles. And this is just the overall picture that I'm seeing, is that on the one hand, it's pretty hard to get started at all, and I mean that's pretty obvious. That's in any field that's the case. But then there's like a really big gap between the people who get started and get stuff out, and people who then also take the go the last mile and put in analytics and do some retention mechanics and really think about how they market their stuff and all these kinds of things that we've been talking about on the podcast for so long now. Then there's a giant gap between people who manage to put something in the App Store and the second group who actually does something with it. And and I think this interview just brought it together so well.
And I get it, like, it's hard because you think you're going to miss some opportunity, and you think that, okay, I'm not going to be a entrepreneur, I'm going to make stuff happen, and so you think that like putting a bunch of apps in the App Store real quickly is making something happen. I get it. Like, I had times where I had a broken project, and this is like in my first year of doing this, and I was up at 3 a.m. every night or every morning to talk to the developer in India or Pakistan, and it was just a it was never going to get fixed. I lost 10,000 on that project, and that's the fear is like when I was starting before that, I was probably reading 40 hours a week. So it's weird because you feel like you should be taking all this action and all this stuff, but as long as you're moving an app forward and you're getting it in the store, you're getting that experience, you're testing, you're doing all these things that we talk about, that will take up a lot of your time, and then reading like crazy, like read everything. Now, I was on the beach in Baja and my neighbors were 80, so it was easy. Like, I didn't have friends coming over saying, hey, let's go get some Coronas and fish tacos, or it was just super quiet, and it was a perfect environment for that. But I think it was important to recognize, like, it's more than just throwing all my money at something saying, okay, I'm going to do it. It's like slowly, I mean, even map out, maybe we should do something like that. Like, or maybe that's part of the MBA, like the literal course. Like, okay, today you're going to get an app in the store. Next week you're going to check the KPIs for all the different things, and here's how you're going to adjust, and here's how you would do this, and today we're going to research markets, like. that could be like a really interesting 13-week course that's part of the MBA that
Yeah, it
just
could be
walks
both
them
part
through.
of
Like,
the NBA and this in the series. And while we're talking about that, some people might be wondering what happened to that series.
oh
I,
yeah,
yeah,
what happened to the series?
yeah. The thing is, on the one hand, it's kind of embarrassing that we don't ship on that series, but on the other hand, I just got to be honest about it. It's like if we were to postpone some of the quote unquote real work we're doing and some of the real exciting projects we're working on just to get the series out, then that would neither benefit the series nor our businesses. I really want to do the series in a way where it's like an evergreen thing, and people can come back to it and re-listen to it again and again. And we'll just need to finish some projects, get some stuff done, and find some quiet time where we can sit down and do this. And also, we are currently still working on the App Business MBA, and there's going to be a lot of content that we can, like ideas that we can take from that and talk about them on the series as well. So it's just a little bit on the back burner right now, and I know people want this right now, so I apologize. But we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it high quality. We're gonna make it good. So I think that's why we just have to postpone it at the moment. Would you agree?
Yeah, I, I agree. Yeah, and I think that this is a good example of. I mean, I'm really big in SOPs and outsourcing and stuff, but we're just in this spot where everything we're building is like building for scale, right? Like Opt-in Mobile, we want to be able to, if we had to, we want to be able to collect, like onboard 10 new clients a day, if that's what the
Yes.
business could do. And so we're kind of building it that way. And we're just in the building phase of so many things. It's not like we're just executing on, it's like, okay, Wednesday's the webinar for the App Business MBA. And okay, here's our weekly Q&A. And it's like everything's in build mode. So that just takes so much time. And it's not something you can outsource.
And
At
shipping
least
three
not the
podcasts a
like,
week and a weekly. It's also something that
yeah.
needs to get
And
done,
then I,
right?
And then I still have BGB. I still have the app business that is out there. Like I'm still making money from the apps there, and still pushing the envelope on some of those apps. And then we still have I've got app Jetpack. I mean it's crazy. It's there's a lot going on. But honestly, dude, I think two of the three that I'm working on are absolute home runs. And the podcast is still just this fun thing to do that is like a way for us to connect with the community and talk with other cool people. But yeah, man, we got a lot going on, so I would not worry about that. I think if we double down on the App Business MBA, and well, that's $1,000 though. I'm also rewriting my book, so we could use that as like a format for the getting started or like the
Yeah, the way I'm thinking about this right now is that I've always phrased it like this: the app business MBA is the in-depth how to do it, and the podcast series would answer the question like, why would I do that, and what do I need to do, and how to do it is then the stuff that you have to do on your own, and you have to find out yourself, because that's
Mhm.
just something you cannot share via audio on a podcast. And so yeah, and so that's where the app business MBA would come in, and where you could just buy yourself a shortcut to that. But once we have the app business MBA and have some like even more content in there than we have planned right now, then we can just
Mhm.
look at that content and go one step back and think about let's talk about this topic or let's talk about that topic on the podcast, and that would
Yeah.
make the series.
Yep. No, I think so too. I think that we had a little epiphany where if we have that 13-week weekly, here's what you do to develop yourself as an app business person, I think that could be a really cool idea. I don't know how that would take a little bit of work to do that, but I think that's like the biggest problem is you get people that you talked to 6 months ago and they're still stuck in the same spot. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know how they're still stuck because I wasn't stuck. Like I don't know. I, I don't know. I got to figure out where people are stuck and why because 6 months is a long time in entrepreneur land. You should be moving forward and like, building more challenging apps and all this kind of stuff. I have a feeling a lot of it's this impatience thing where you go all full bore at one thing and then that kind of messes up, and then you go full bore at another thing and it messes up, and it's just like slow down and like pick the thing. But yeah, I think we got between the audience and people talking with us outside of the podcast and our own experience, man, we got a lot we could do with the weekly, with the series, and with the MBA. So I'm kind of thinking out loud. I really like that idea of like a 13-week development thing. But all right, man, what else we got to talk about?
Well, it seems like we don't have any questions right now. Probably it's too much summertime for people to join the hangout on Friday. But I think we're already like over half an hour in. So want to wrap it up?
Yeah. So what are the things? We've got join the Facebook group. Rate us and review us.
We have a newsletter.
We have a newsletter. Yeah, Monday will be the first newsletter that we have, and so we'll just keep improving that thing. But we've got it down to where the VA makes most of it, Hazel, and then we add on additional stuff, so it like we don't have to be reformatting this every week. So that should be cool. And yeah, I mean, keep the questions coming because it's awesome to hear what some people are struggling with and how we can help. But the more and more people we talk to, it's like, man, if it's not clear that the opportunity is enormous, but you have to treat it like a business because you're competing with people like David and I, then it should be very clear that that mobile is an opportunity and treat it like a business. And I hope we're like hammering that point home. Yeah, so if that's interesting, join all of our stuff. What do we got? We got Facebook group, we got newsletter, we got rate and review us on the podcast, we've got leave a comment. That's the best way, guys. Comment on stuff so we can like interact and you guys can get to know other people that are listeners and struggling with the same thing you are. Yeah, I guess that's it, man.
All right,
so
then.
Is that it? Okay. Yeah. Thanks, guys. We'll. Yep.